All right.
So, welcome everyone to another Street Entrepreneurs digital workshop. We're here with Laura, who's going to talk to us about her business and how she went about creating a values based business. We were just discussing how so many entrepreneurs build businesses without taking into account what that means for their lifestyle and what that means for their life's vision and mission, and how sometimes before you get really engaged with the business model and with the business itself, you ought to think about how is that going to impact you, your family, your life, so that you can really design a business around that. So I often get people coming to me and saying, I'm starting a business because I want to own my own time and I want to have more time for my family. And then I asked him, great. So what business are you starting? And the answer is like a restaurant. And I'm like, really? You do realize you're going to be working when everyone's resting. And I think they're like, oh, right, there's that. I was like, I'm going to get a manager. I was like, no, guys, you're a founder, you run it. So and if the manager quits, you're taking over. So really design a business that's going to fit your lifestyle, your mission, and your values. And without further ado, Laura, the founder of Freedom Makers, please take it away. Thank you very
Sure.
much for being here.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me and having me. I'm excited to speak today, and hopefully it's helpful to everyone out there. And I thought I would start by giving a rundown of my business because I think that will help as I go through explaining how we got set up. When I'll reference things and you'll know what I'm talking about. And then I thought I'd also kind of give sort of a history of how I got to where I am, so you kind of know where I'm coming from. So my business is called Freedom Makers. It's a virtual assistant staffing agency that we hire military spouses to support small businesses. Many of them are solo business owners. And so we pair them up together, and the spouse supports the business owner in whatever way that the business owner needs. It's all remote from home type work. And then we just make sure that that relationship is successful. We call the spouses freedom makers. So you'll hear me say that. And then that title is the name of our company, and it also ties into our value of freedom, which I'll get to later as well. And so a little bit about me. I started off in the Air Force. Right out of college, I was in the Air Force, and the Air Force is, most people know the military is very structured, and that just wasn't a fit for me. I left after about 6 years and went straight into business school because I was raised to be ambitious. And I thought that's what the next thing I needed to do in my career is go get this like top notch business degree and start this big, crazy business and be, successful in that definition of success. I started my first business while I was in school, and it failed. It never got off the ground. It did not succeed for a variety of reasons. Some personal, some due to the economy, some due to the market. But I think a lot of it was because I didn't really have the values in place aside from knowing what we wanted to offer. I didn't really have anything else in place. Um, so I did that, and then I took a job in HR and stayed in that long enough to basically make the money back that I lost on my business. And but in that business, or in that job, I was in charge of recruiting, and it was during that process of, we were hiring something like 30 people a week. And so really kind of getting that streamlined and getting a process in place so we could handle that type of workload without sort of a major increase in budget or people. That sort of sparked an idea for me to do recruiting for small businesses, teaching them how do you create a recruiting process so that you can hire and not overwhelm yourself with trying to hire people that may or may not be a good fit for the business. Um, the problem with that is that I was miserable. When I started that business, I kept thinking, just like what Juliana said, I kept thinking, oh, well, when I'm big enough, I won't have to do the recruiting. That was the thing. I wanted to run a business. I didn't want to be the recruiter for our clients. And I kept thinking, well, when I'm big enough, I'll hire recruiters and I won't have to do it anymore. But the thing was, is I was so miserable, I never got big enough to hire anybody because I wasn't following up with sales leads and with existing clients to grow the business. And that's what I realized. You'll hear a lot when people say starting a business is hard, and that is true. But what's hard is two things. One, there's so much to do and not enough hands to do it. Two, you're kind of operating in the blind a little bit, so you don't really know if the decisions you're making are the right decisions until you're further along, and and that can be hard to handle. But that second business was hard for me because I didn't enjoy it. I was miserable in it, and so that's sort of the first lesson for me, I guess, was around letting your values shape your business, was listening to my body. I would say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to be, a highfalutin business." And then my body was like, "Yeah, I'm not getting out of bed for that." And so I had to learn, listen to my body. What if I was willing to do it, I would do it. If my body wasn't willing to do it, I wouldn't do it, no matter how hard my brain told myself to do it. And so that was one of the big lessons I learned. Was it was hard because I was miserable. It wasn't hard because it was a positive challenge. And in fact, a friend of mine, we were talking a couple weeks ago, and she has a business that is a career coaching business, and she was going through a similar thing where she couldn't get herself to do certain business development tasks, and she was really beating herself up, really struggling. And I was trying to be supportive as a friend. I didn't want to be like, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, but just be more like, be there for her and support. And then one day she said she had an epiphany, and she said, I don't want to grow. And when I say growth, I mean like the venture capital tech startup, like 10x growth type thing. She's like, I don't want that. I'm totally fine being a solo business owner. I'm totally fine with staying at the size that I am. In order for me to grow, I would have to bring on a team, and I don't want that. I'm totally fine with where I'm at right now. And that was a huge sort of relief for her, pressure off her shoulders, where just having that realization that the reason why she wasn't accomplishing those um, business development tasks is because she didn't want to grow, and recognizing that in herself helped her to be more comfortable with the tasks she does need to do in order to maintain her level of business that she's at right now. And so that's number one, like for values shaping your business, listen to your body. Understand what you truly want to do and build your business around that, whether it's level of growth, whether it's type of business, whether it's your role in the business. If you want to be the manager of the restaurant, then hire a CEO. If you want to be the CEO, hire a manager or whatever. And so just recognizing where your strengths are, what you enjoy doing, and staying with that is a critical piece. So I realized I was miserable in that business. I shifted to the third business, which is Freedom Makers. But when I came up with that idea, I had to sit down and I forced myself. I'm like, really think about what is it that you what's appealing to you about this business, because I'm one of those people where I have a new business idea every week, and that's what I'm known for. Like my friends will be like, what's your new business idea? And so I was nervous about, you know how do I know 6 months from now I'm not going to be bored and want a different business, or I'm going to be miserable, or especially because Freedom Makers was going to involve people other than me. So I didn't want to get going and be like, yeah, I'm out, and sort of leave all these people hanging. And so I really sat down and just sort of asked myself, like, what is it about this business that I know will stick with me? And that was freedom. And that's what led to the name. For me, it was very important to be able to travel while running my business. That was critical. And in the image in my head, which was, being able to run my business from the beach, which has not happened, but by choice. um, and but that was a thing where I wanted to be able to run my business from anywhere. And I realized that when putting the idea together of tapping into this untapped resource of talent with the military spouses, and then providing this resource to business owners who needed help but didn't need an employee. They didn't need like, what's it called, like structured help. They didn't need full-time help. They didn't even need part-time help. They needed a couple hours a week or a couple hours a day. Like they didn't need, consistent help. They didn't necessarily even have the revenue for consistent help, which made them afraid to hire. What could we give them? What did they need as well? And that's what led to this concept of freedom, because for military spouses, it's the ability to keep working even though they're moving every couple years. The ability to keep working even though when they move, they might move from a major city to a smaller area that's not going to have the type of job they were working at when they were in a major city. So it was providing that freedom for them to be able to continue working in the same type of role, no matter where they were living. For the business owners, it was the freedom to be able to get the help they needed at the level they needed. For those of you who've been in business, you probably know, selling packages is a big deal or sort of highly recommended, right? Which from a business model standpoint, I'm totally in favor of, right? Because when you sell via packages, for example, the if you go to like a technology software site, it'll say, for you at this level, you get this much service. And then at this level, you get that much service. And then, the highest level, you get this much service, right? And the middle one's always the most popular one, right? um, the nice thing about that is that you can have consistent revenue and you can have predictable revenue. So I'm absolutely a fan of it from an academic sort of business model standpoint. From freedom makers directly, it would not work for us because I realized our principle was freedom and we couldn't sort of box clients in to a certain level of service. So for us, that became a thing where we had no minimum hour requirement, no sort of, you have to buy this many hours every month type thing for our clients, because it had to be freedom for them too. And so when I sat down and I thought about it, I'm like, this is what is important to me. This business has to provide freedom to all three legs of the stool, if you will. For me, it has to be completely virtual so I can run it from anywhere. Same for the military spouses. It has to be something they can do from home so that they can do it no matter where they're stationed. And then for the business owners, they have to have the freedom to surplus or come down if they need to based on the needs of their business. And so that became our number one guiding principle. That's what led me to start the business. That's what led to our name, Freedom Makers, because that was the number one driver of everything. And the nice thing was that it helped us make decisions when we were facing a sort of decision on, well, how do we want to set up our business? Going back to, do we want to offer packages, things like that? That became a guidance for us. Like, well, what offers the most freedom? And then that would help us make a decision on which path to take based on what provided the most freedom to the most people. And, it's one of those things where sometimes it got hard to say no. We would have clients that would say, I understand you're completely virtual. I love it, but it would be great if they could come in once a month into the office. And sometimes that it was tempting. It was like, oh, that, this could be a big client for us. But then knowing that it was important for it to be completely virtual so that the spouse could continue working helped us say no, and we would say, I understand, but the problem with that is when that spouse moves, they're going to lose a job. And people were like, oh, that's right. I get it. I understand. And maybe sometimes we lost a client because of it, but that was okay because that helped us stay within our values. And so that was a huge deal for us, was setting up that guiding principle that, freedom is our guiding principle. Eventually, we added two other guiding principles. One is strive for excellence. The idea came that, I guess it's cliche. I didn't know. It was kind of the first time I'd heard it, but you can never achieve excellence. You can only ever strive for it, because once you achieve it, now it's your standard. And so that really sort of unlocked a lot for us as far as expecting people to consistently trying to improve. and even us, we recognize we're not perfect. We're nowhere near perfect. We're a small business. And so the stuff we'd like to offer is not going to have all the bells and whistles that the big companies offer. And that's okay, because we're doing what we can with what we have, and we're consistently trying to make it better. And so that became a second principle. And then the third principle is transparency. So we try to be as open as we can with our clients and with our freedom makers, so that it's never like we're hiding anything or not being open and honest with everyone. So, and that allows us to be able to share feedback without of being afraid of hurting someone's feelings or stepping on toes. We can say, look, transparency, this is what our client said, we want to share it with you, do what you want with it, and vice versa. And so um, the thing is by starting with uh, values to sort of guide our business, it's now become our culture that it guides our business. And in fact, someone was laughing at me last week because we were in a meeting, and the vendor asked us a question, and I said, well, our guiding principle is transparency, so we should do this. And my team member started laughing at me, and I said, what? And she's like, I knew you were going to say that. So that's like our thing. It has really defined who we are and how we operate, to the point where we'll bring it up, and it's not something that you write down and put it away in a desk drawer and you said, oh, we did our values, our core values. It's something that we're constantly referencing. In fact, I think it was last week we were discussing something that we all of us weren't on the same page with, and someone said, hey, how's this fit in with our value of striving for excellence? And so the ability for someone to bring that up and then for us to discuss it was something that I was very proud of. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was something that I was very proud of, that we've built that culture in our company, that our values shape and define who we are and how we operate. And it started from the beginning. We started with one, and now we're at three, but all three of them guide us. And I'll also say that, for us, or for me, I learned that doing things my way is okay, right? Because I think for a long time, I kind of felt that pressure, like, oh, I need to be growing fast. I should be growing at this level because that's what's expected of someone like me in a business like mine. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to grow that fast. And I didn't want that kind of pressure, in the sense that I didn't think that pressure served our clients and served our freedom makers, right? And what I'm specifically talking about is I come across a lot of entrepreneurs who are trying to raise capital, and they're trying to raise it from venture capital, and they think that that's really their only option. And there isn't. There are a ton of ways to raise capital, including bootstrapping, but including loans, but also finding investors who are going to invest based on your values versus your growth potential. And I just found that, I don't know, it just always left a taste in my mouth where I'm like, oh, there's this pressure to grow, at this exponential rate. And then you have to exit quickly. And that's because that's what the VCs want. And that's how you make money. And I'm just like, I didn't like it. And so I was able to do it my way. And I think that's a critical piece as well, is being able and being willing to do things your way, which can be hard, especially when you're getting going, because who knows if your way is going to work, right? The other ways are known. They're known for a reason, because for the most part, they do work. And so if you're doing it through your way, having sort of the faith that it's going to work can be tough, right? And that was part of where I struggled for a long time, because it's like, we were not wanting to do packages. We weren't wanting to raise capital. We were wanting to do it in a way that was in line with our values. And for the first couple of years when we weren't profitable, I wasn't sure. I was like, are we ever going to be profitable? I didn't know. And I just had to go on faith that it would be. And if not, it was a valiant effort. And I would apply those lessons learned to my next business, right? And then once we hit profitability, suddenly I was the most confident person in the world. And I just had it down, and I knew exactly, I was right all along, which was not true. And and of course I didn't know that I was right when I was doing it until I proved that it worked. And so then, you know, going back to saying no, for example, to clients that weren't fitting in with our values, it got easier over time because we knew it was the right thing to do, right? We knew, hey, if I say no to you because we're not going to send someone on site, that's okay because another client's going to come along and they're going to use their person completely virtually. And so at first it was like, oh, is this the right way? Am I doing it right? And then now that it's working, it's like, okay, I did it. We did it right. We can continue. It becomes a positive reinforcing wheel, if you will. And so other examples around that was for me. So I read a book a few years ago called Profit First, and it's a cash flow management system. And basically it's, you have different bank accounts for your taxes, for your operating expense, for the account where all your revenue comes in, for payroll. I think I have something like 6 business bank accounts, and it's how I manage the cash. Because if it's all in one account, then I'm like, I got all this money to spend, and I forget that I'm keeping parts of it for certain things. So by putting them into other accounts, then I'm not touching them except for that particular thing that it's in that account for. And my first bookkeeper did not understand that. She's like, that's what the general ledger is for. Why do you need to have all these different bank accounts? And in her case, it was frustrating because that's 6 different accounts that she had to reconcile and close the books for every month. And but at that time, I didn't know if I was, if I was doing the right thing. And I'm like, oh, should I not be doing it this way? And then over time, I'm like, no, this is how it works for me. And this is how I'm able to make sure we have cash every month to cover paying our freedom makers. When you're in the staffing business, you're in a very cash flow heavy business. So I'm like, this is how I'm able to maintain our cash so that it works for me. So then when it came time where I needed to find another bookkeeper, that became a criteria for me. Are you going to be okay with this? Are you going to huff and puff about it? Or are you going to be okay with it? And it helped me to make sure that I was, working with people who were in line with my values and supporting my values or our company values rather than detracting from it. And so that's sort of, once you know what your values are and you're using them, they can sort of truly become a North Star and guide you through everything else. And then once you get in that habit, it's almost like a muscle, right? It becomes easier to say no to things that detract you from your values and to say yes to things that propel you toward your values. And so that was really encouraging and enlightening for me to recognize, hey, I need to work with people who support how we're doing things and who aren't going to push back every time that we say we're doing it this way or that way. And then also, and that even came to my team itself. Like I said, we openly talk about our guiding principles and we use them to guide us and we use them to shape how we move forward. And that's, a critical piece of it is that, incorporating it and embodying our values into our business. So that was kind of the quick down and dirty. I hope I didn't speak too fast, but basically, listen to your body, which means knowing what your values are and incorporating them. And even if that means they're a little bit different, that's okay. You can do it that way, right? Like the example Juliana gave, like if you want to control your time and you want to have time with your family, set up your business to be that way. And it might be a little bit different, right? I remember a few years ago, I was in Sydney, Australia for the holidays, for Christmas and New Year's. And I was blown away by how many businesses, how many like local restaurants said, we're shut down from December 20th to January 6th. See you next year. I was like, what? And I think here people would be almost horrified. Like, how could you shut down? Oh my God, But that's the thing is like, if you set that up from the beginning, then your customers come to appreciate that and they expect it and they value it, right? A big name example, I mean, right? Say what you want, however you feel about Chick-fil-A, right? but their value is they are shut down on Sundays. And some people are like, oh my God, they must lose so much money because they shut down every week for a day. Yet they have stuck to it, and now everyone knows it. And people, I mean, they're doing just fine, right? People aren't losing any money, or the company isn't losing any money by being shut down for a day a week. And so that's, you know, whether or not how you feel about them, but that's just an example of even large companies. You can stick with your values. People might complain about it, but you can still be successful with it, and then you're happier. And that's the whole point of entrepreneurship, right? Is you being happy with how you're running your business and how you're running your life, how those two meld together. And then of course, if you're running your business based on your values, then you're supporting your community and your clients and your employees as well. So that was really fast, but
No, that was great. Thank you so much for that presentation. So if you guys have any questions, you can write the Street Entrepreneurs Facebook page and I will read them out loud for Laura. I have a question for you. So do you have a process for determining values? Like, what are some questions you ask yourself when you were thinking about what are my values?
yeah, well, so the big one, was freedom. And that was, I don't, I mean, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So I don't remember exactly what I asked myself, but I remember just thinking, how do I know if I'm going to stick with this
Mm.
6 months from now? How do I know I'm not going to be bored with it? And I know that travel has always been very important to me. And that was a big deal, was being able to travel no matter what my business was.
I'm
And
good.
so that's what I had to set up, a completely
Oh, you're
virtual
fine.
business.
I'm just really.
Mhm.
Wait, am I on mute?
No,
I'm sorry.
you're fine.
I'm sorry. Please, where were you?
Oh yeah. So I was just saying, like, I just had to really think about, what was important to me. Being able to travel was important. And this might be a little bit misguided, but my thing was I really didn't want to be the one doing the service for the clients because of my own insecurities. And then it actually worked out because I realized where I'm strong is running a business, right? Where I'm not strong is working for someone else. And so even though I didn't realize it at the time, that ended up becoming a helpful thing for me too.
Do you tell your clients what your values are from the get-go?
Yes, I don't remember if I'm not sure if we discuss it during sales calls, but it's in our email signature. And so they see it right away from there. And it comes up, like I said, like if they're like, oh, can they come into the office once a month? And we're like, no, because our guiding principle is freedom, and they'll lose their job if we do that. And so
Okay, awesome. Would you advise talking to your customers right away, like, hey, this is what we believe? And if this is not cool with you, we're not the right company for you.
yes, I think so. Yes. In
Yeah.
fact, we're trying to sort of figure out right now for us, how do we better word that
Yeah.
for our clients so that it's easier for us to be like, you know what, I don't think we're a fit, you know, thank you, but no thank you, right? And so that's something we're working on right now ourselves, how to improve that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have some questions. Where do I start? Let's see. This one is interesting. So it actually mentions Chick-fil-A. Um, Chick-fil-A's values can also turn people off. For instance, they donate to
Yes,
anti-LGBT marriage,
right.
um, which for them is probably okay. Like they
Sure.
don't see gay
Yeah,
shopping at their stores or their chicken sandwich shops. So
right. But that's the thing
yeah,
too, as much as I abhor that, right? And that's why I
yeah,
said whatever you say about them, like that's an
yeah.
example though of how they're living by their values. And yes, they're going to turn people away, just like we might turn people away by us saying, no, you can't have, your person can't come work on site for you,
Hmm.
because then that's a violation of our value of freedom, right? And so, yeah, so as abhorrent as that value is for them, it's an example of how there is a company living by its values and is successful in it. And so you can be successful living by your values too.
Right, right. And I almost feel like every time you buy something or you purchase something or you get a service, in some ways you're voting, right? And
Right. Right.
especially when it comes to values built companies, right?
Right.
So if you prefer your chicken secular, then you won't go to Chick-fil-A, right?
Right.
Which is probably a good thing. Like I don't eat Chick-fil-A for as much as I really like their
Sure.
waffle fries, just because I hate that they fund
Right.
projects to undermine gay marriage.
Right.
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 So I like how actually I think Chick Fil A was a great example in that sense because um, the fact that they are a values run company means that they either turn on or turn off a lot of people, right? And it gets you the kind of customer you're looking for. So you
Right.
want the customer that's not going to want to eat chicken on Sundays,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that sort of
And
stuff.
and maybe a better example that's less contentious, right, is that's less around moral values, if you will, is going those small those mom and pop restaurants in Sydney, Australia, that would shut down for 2 weeks. Like how
Yeah.
much revenue were they losing to be shut down for 2 weeks? But yet, well, let me rephrase that. In Sydney, it was almost expected that you would shut down for 2 weeks because everyone wants to have a holiday, right? Here, people would be like, what? That's crazy. How could you shut down for 2 weeks? How much money would you lose for that? Right. But then if you think about it, I know I've seen some restaurants where they're like a Chinese restaurant where they're like shut down for the month of August, went back home, you know, and it's like good for them. They're going to go visit family. They're going to go spend time with their family and be home. Right. So a great example of, hey, we're going to shut down every July or every December, whatever it is. And that's a great example because I want to go skiing or I want to go to my kids' graduation or something. So I'm going to shut down every summer or whatever. And that's a great example of doing something that most Americans would think is crazy, but you do it and you're able to make your business thrive because of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm even thinking about that with the face covers, right? So
Mm,
a lot of stores are making it mandatory for you to wear a face cover and say what you will. Don't come into my store without a face cover because I want to protect the health of my customers, and that is a value we stand by,
sure,
right?
sure.
So that's probably another example. So we have a question from someone who is trying to figure out how to. Sorry, it's a really long one, so I'm trying to like synthesize it.
Uh,
Um, they're trying to figure out um, how to make their business fit with their lifestyle.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're asking how you went about figuring out how your business might impact your lifestyle.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, number one for me is I wanted to be able to travel full time. And so I knew the business had to be completely virtual. That said, I was uh, living in an area where I already had a big network, so that did help me to roll it out. But I did speak with a few business owners, not trying to sell them, but just saying, hey, if this were something you'd be interested in, what kind of things would you be looking for? And then that helped me to figure out our model as far as, what pricing we would do, what services we would offer, things like that. The other thing is, I waited until I had a client before really figuring out or really going to find people to do the work type thing. And I also took it as sort of one step at a time. Like I didn't have everything built out and ready right from day one. It was like, okay, this is what we're going to offer. We got our first client. Let's now offer it. And oh, we had this problem. Well, how do we fix that problem for the next time? And every time I did that, it was more like, okay, how does this fit in with my life and what I want to do? And so, it just kind of grew organically, but kind of staying in that space of this is what I want it to look like. So how do I make it work within that? Right. So like we now have 4 what I call core team members that help run the business. We live in 4 different states. I've never met any of them in person. And that came about organically from wanting to have a fully virtual business. But things like we don't have set out working hours. People work whenever it works for them. We do have set meeting times, but everyone else makes it fit within their life. And that came about because our thing was freedom, right? And so um, the three other people on the core team, they all have kids. And so sometimes, like one of them has really young kids. So she makes herself available for phone calls when her kids are in daycare, right? And that's fine by me. So that was part of it is for us, using a specific example, we don't have set work hours because everyone chooses it based on what works in their life, right? But I couldn't have told you that that was going to be um, uh, practice in our company when I first started. It was more, it just came along as I knew what our principle was, what our values were, and how that needed to work within our company as those issues came up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. We also have a question from someone who says, I recently started running my consulting business remote. Communicating with team members has been challenging. Do you have any advice for a remote work experience?
Yes. So we use well, first and foremost, get team communication out of email. That's one, because if it's within email, because oftentimes with your team members it's short, quick, fire questions, and if it's in email it's getting buried with customer emails, vendor emails, spam, all that. So get it into a chat or some sort of IM system like Slack or Teams or Google Chat or something like that. Just get it out of email. And then whatever system you're using to keep track of all the tasks. So if you're using a project management software, if you're using just sort of a checklist software like Trello, Asana, Process Street, things like that, a lot of those have communication functions. It might be chat or it might just be comments, but keep it in there, and then that can help you keep track of everything. Um, our big thing is workflows. Like if you have workflows in place, then people can comment within the right workflow, and it helps you stay organized and able to communicate with each other that way.
Awesome, awesome. Um, do you have a favorite? Asana, Trello?
Yeah. So I always say part of the thing is figuring out where you are. So I always say tech amplifies. And if you have crap system, tech is going to make it worse, right? If you have a good workflow, tech is going to make it better. So I think it's important to figure out how you work and then find a tech tool that works within that. That said, there are some that have a lot of bells and whistles that I think attract people to them that can be overwhelming if you're not ready for it, right?
Got it.
So we started with Process Street, which is basically a dynamic checklist. And I'm a big checklist person. Other
Yeah.
people start with Trello or whatever, but for us, checklists were my thing. And then we kind of outgrew it. Or I don't want to say outgrew it. We evolved. We needed something more robust. So about a year ago, we switched to Asana, and we love Asana. But prior to that, Asana would have been overwhelming for us. We would not have understood it. We wouldn't have been able to maximize its capability. So that's why I say, like, really figure out what you're looking for and start there. And then you'll come to realize it's not working for you anymore and you need to go move on to something else.
Perfect. Perfect. Wow. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you. And I also appreciate your business model because um, I I think military spouses deserve as much love and support as military personnel. And a good friend of mine is on the reserves, and his wife is raising three kids while he's on deployments and trainings, and I have so much respect for her, and it's my hope that all the moves impact her family less, um,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a big sacrifice, right? And it's a family sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
and you're making it easier for military spouses to work, um, while also providing clients great service, one that prioritizes freedom. So, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And sorry about the technical mute.
No problem.
I, I I'm sure it's happened to other people.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Yeah,
also, my dad was in the army. I grew up in the military, and as a kid, I loved it because we got to travel all over the world, make new friends all the time, right? But that's as a kid. Um, for spouses, it's frustrating. I sometimes they'll join me, they'll call and they'll say, I haven't worked since my kids were born because it was just easier with all the moving to not work, but I want to use my brain again. And I'm like, hang on, you've been using your brain, you've been raising kids, you just want to use a different part of your brain.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's like giving them something else to focus on, to use their skills and capabilities for. And so it's exciting to be able to offer that to the spouses who want it and need it.
That is amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for being here. We have, if you guys are watching, we have another workshop tomorrow that's going to be amazing. You definitely want to tune in for that. And I promise I will mute myself when I'm speaking. Um, if any
No,
of y'all work from home, you know, you have like people in the same room and you're like, how can I seem as professional as possible when there's other things going on in the same room? Right?
yeah,
But
well,
anyway,
understandable. Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you. I hope it was helpful, and I'm
It was
always
amazing. It was amazing. Take care.
all right. You too.
Bye.
Bye.